Okay, Mark meets Wayne Arnold, Global CEO at Profero. Hi Wayne.
Nice to meet you. How you doing?
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for your time. Obviously you now live in New York.
Yeah, I'm another Brit in New York, which is probably the last thing New York needs, but it's good. I spend time going back and forth across the pond quite a lot. But
how regularly do you come back?
Over the last couple of years, it's been almost every sort of like 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Mainly for work and clients and stuff. So, and it's an easy commute.
Who do you fly by? Virgin?
Yeah, Virgin. I've done the classic media thing. It took me a little while to get the gold card, but I think there was quite sadly, I think this is quite sad, if I tell you how much I travel, is for the last 2 years I've only had my hair cut in an airport lounge. So, because I quite like it because the only question they ask is what glass of wine do you want, first of all. And because they know you've got to travel quickly, you have a very short haircut, so it's good.
And you get it cut by the same people?
It depends. There's 2 or 3 of them that you kind of know. But yeah, so my hair is cut by Virgin Atlantic.
Can you give us a very quick summary of both how you got into the industry and your career to date?
The career today is going to be short. How I got into it was, maybe people may know, originally I did law, and I was actually a really bad lawyer, and I kind of learned very quickly that I was going to be a bad lawyer.
But it took you 7 years of education.
Well, it took me 7 years of random education at various universities to realise that law was bad. And actually I was travelling, and I was working for a company called Johnson Stokes and Masters, where I kind of blagged the sort of the top paralegal job at the time in Asia. And I thought I was a mate, so like 21 years old, had my own office in Hong Kong.
Made it.
Overlooking basically Hong Kong harbour, had a secretary, didn't have a clue what you need the secretary for. And I quickly realised that it wasn't like LA law, and you didn't meet loads of Amanda Donahos. So I kind of quit that very quickly. I then got a job in Hong Kong again for Merrill Lynch. And there was this wonderful little box that sat in the corner. And this is a long way of answering your question. But in that box on Monday mornings, all the expats would go to it. And half of them would walk away happy and half of them would walk away sad. And I thought it was really interesting. How can a little green box give such emotion? So like week 2 of being there on Monday morning, I went along to see what this thing was. And it was the first ever Bloomberg machine in Asia. So in fact the first ever internet machine in Asia. And what it was doing was not pumping down financial information, it was pumping down the football results from the weekend. Because bizarrely at that time, which was like 95, 96, the only way you could get the information was either waiting for the South China Morning Post to print them on Tuesday, which seems crazy in this sort of world of access, or you had to phone your parents at the weekend. And most expats at that time were hungover at the weekend, so it all went into Monday morning. So I, like everyone else, my first experience of getting the internet was finding out that Southampton Football Club had lost, probably to Man U, or we were in the Premiership at that point. And that's how I got into the internet. And from there, when I left Hong Kong and Kuala Lumpur and Bangkok and working in that region for a bit, came back and started Profero with a lot of naivety, a lot of innocence, with my brother at the time.
And now Profero is one of the biggest independent...
We are officially the largest independent in the world. Okay. So we've offices now in London, in New York, and everywhere in Asia, from Sydney to Singapore to Tokyo to Seoul to Shanghai to Beijing, and still expanding.
How long until we set up to WPP, Omnicom?
Everyone asks that question. They've been asking for 14 years. So we're still enjoying what we're doing.
Good.
And so there's no pressure from that side. But I mean, if I had a pound or a dollar for every time I ask that question, I'd probably be quite rich.
Yeah, I really want to ask that question.
I think the long and short, there's still a lot of demand, and for good independent businesses will always do well. And provided you're still enjoying what you're doing, then you don't feel that pressure.
What's the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you in your career to date?
Most embarrassing? There's been plenty. The one which actually is quite a long time ago, but it was during the dot-com boom the second time round. I'm not sure it was embarrassing, but we had to do this pitch in front of 15 international members, of which was an Abbey National, but the international arm Abbey National. And they had hired out this beautiful room, and it's like a full-on like hour-and-a-half presentation of creativity, the best of creativity. This was in London.
Yep.
And we quickly realised about 2 minutes into the presentation that there was no internet connection and nothing worked. And so this whole presentation was on the internet. So for an hour and a half, we had to explain creativity through whiteboards. So if you imagine drawing, explaining every single brilliant case study that's ever been done through digital via a flip pen and a marker. It was embarrassing, but and actually it was the worst one. The worst one was the Revolution Awards, and Phil, who was the editor at the time, he congratulated us because we had won about 4 awards at the Revolution. This is again a few years back, and I was a little bit drunk, and I went to congratulate or shake his hand, but I forgot I had a glass of port in my hand. So rather than shake his hand, I kind of we poured all over his white shirt. And I'm not embarrassing, but I sent him a new dinner jacket shirt the next day.
Nice.
Yeah. So after throwing port over the jug was not the best idea.
And what was the outcome of that Abbey pitch that you had to...
We didn't win.
Fine. So lesson learned. Yeah. What's the best bit of career advice you've been given?
The best one is, and it sounds a bit weird when you first say it, but to always do yourself out of your own job. As human beings, we spend... Our natural instinct is to protect. Our natural instinct is to preserve the role we have. Hence why you see creative directors in our industry being very reluctant to embrace digital or new technologies, or to give up their corner office in their big, shiny office block they have. And actually, the best advice is to do the opposite. If you do yourself out of your job, you will constantly move on, and actually you create more of a legacy business. So the more you develop, and you develop young people and more talents, then the more likely you are to be successful.
So how have you tried to
do that?
Yes,
advice is always easy to give. Succession planning.
Okay.
is if you look at Profero, actually almost every single role has been filled by someone internally. So we've brought people in, obviously naturally for new roles, but if you look at a lot of our MDs and a lot of our senior talent, they've come from people within. So our client servicing directors becoming our MDs, becoming our regional CEOs. So so just have real strong succession planning and sort of planning, I guess, 1-2 years ahead of where your next talent's going to come from.
What's the best thing about agency life for you?
You don't... We work with a brilliant collective bunch of people. Right? Especially with what I get to do is the global side. So in the last 5 weeks, I've spent time people hanging out in Buenos Aires and Sao Paulo and Shanghai. And although we've got all these different cultures, there's this common kind of person that just is mad enough to get into our industry. Because it's a completely insane industry, because everything we create is normally just for the creativity we've created that day. Is
there an international Profero culture then? Or is it...
Yeah, number one core value, you need to be globally curious to join Profero. If you're not globally curious, and it doesn't mean you've travelled all around the world, doesn't mean that you've got basically loads of stamps in your passport, but because some people just haven't had that opportunity. But you want to, and you are interested in kind of working with that person in Beijing, right? And getting on that phone call at 7 a.m. in the morning just to speak to Alex, just to learn what's kind of happening out there. So core number one value is you're globally curious. If you spend your holidays going to Magaluf, or where I am now in New York going to Florida, you probably haven't got a chance in hell.
Fine, but that's a good tip for people that are looking to get a job in the Profero network, is to have that global curiosity. If you could own any other agency or network in the world, who would it be?
Good question. I think the guys who constantly do a good job, if not a brilliant job, internationally, and I think they do great jobs locally, but I think also it's very much harder to create great agencies around the world. I think Wayne and Kennedy. Now you kind of look at Christian Porter's done a great job in one location, okay, and same with Goodby. But you look at how Wayne and Kennedy's been very consistent in its offerings around the world. They've kind of got that network model working, which I think a lot of the big traditional networks haven't done. They're patchy. They're good in one location, bad in another. But I think of all the ones that have gone global, and that's naturally where we kind of sit more, they're the ones that probably have done it best.
And obviously at every level in this industry, there's always things to learn. And I'm sure at your level as well, there's all those things that you've never seen before, didn't expect, and you constantly always learn. Who in the industry, anywhere in the world, would you like to work for, to learn from?
Oh my God. I'm not sure if it's one individual, because I don't think anyone's got that magic bullet. I think back to being that globally curious, every time we go to a new market, or we basically see a team, we learn something new. So the other day was in China, and sitting there talking to the local guys who are local social guys there, and they were talking about Weibo, okay? And if you're familiar with Weibo, but Weibo is like Twitter meets Facebook meets YouTube meets something else, right? It's all in one, like Tumblr, all in one place. And you sit there, and this young guy, who's basically one of our team members, 22, 23, just being evangelical about what Weibo was. And he suddenly went, actually, no, what's happening in a place like China with Weibo would absolutely kill Facebook and Twitter and all those guys over in the UK or in the US. Yes. So I'm not sure it's actually one individual. It's more about trying to learn something new every place we go to. And like in Latin America, learning basically the way that the media and the creative world has to work really perfectly there. I mean, you can take all those bits and bring them back. In Seoul, looking at how basically 120 meg broadband is changing the way that grandmas communicate to their kids. Until you have 120 meg broadband in your home, you don't realise what you can do. And like mobile, and back in the days when Japan was at the forefront of that. So I mean, I know that's kind of more on learning of skill sets, but I think that comes from the people who are making the inventions and the actions.
What are your interests outside of work?
I started quite a few, but the one that keeps coming up is I started running for a while, and what started is doing like a 5-mile run. A mate of mine. So there's this race called the Marathon des Sables, which is a race in the Sahara Desert, and it's like 6 marathons in 6 days across the centre of the Sahara Desert, and you have to be completely self-sufficient. It's like stupid. And then what happened was we got signed up and we did that. And then so from that I've done like an Ironman, I've done other marathons, and so I actually just came back last Saturday from a marathon in Bordeaux, which is probably the best marathon everyone should do. It's called Marathon de Murdoch. And it's 26 miles through the vineyards of Bordeaux, and there's 23 wine stops on the way. So you sort of run, and you have a little glass of wine, and you run, have a glass of wine, a bit of pâté.
And what time did you do that one in?
About 6 hours. Very slow. So a lot of running, but it's great again when you're travelling to put a pair of shoes in your kit bag or the suitcase, and it's the best way to see a city.
Cool. What's the best brand you've worked on? Is there one that stands out?
Yeah, there's one that stands out, but I can't say it because we're not allowed to say it. But everyone's probably got one of them in their back pocket. The stuff we always love doing is, Mini is just always great fun because it's kind of one of those brands you can have such great creative sort of license with. Yeah. But the stuff that I loved the most was our COI work. You look at the stuff we've done. We seem to get every single problem child. So we've done sexual health. We've done paedophilia, we've done drugs, we've done binge drinking, all those difficult topics that are so important in today's society. We've challenged at some point. So I think that some of the work we've done for COI and the government, I think is probably again some of the stuff I'm most proud of. But then the stuff just done for Smirnoff, launching Smirnoff across 52 markets in one day. So one day, 52 markets go live, and it's truly local, not global, for the nightlife exchange. Again, I think there's too many to go. That was the one that I love the most. They're all different for different reasons, but I think maybe sort of the Mini, the Smirnoff, and the government stuff is probably.
What's the craziest thing that's happened to you since you've been in digital? That you've taken a step back and realised that moving out of being a lawyer was the right move. Because I'm sure your mum, I'm sure your parents what are you doing when you...
Yeah, there was... I mean, the biggest thing is just not knowing what tomorrow holds, right? And we used to have this phrase that the next 3 months are the most important 3 months of our lives, right? And there was always the next 3 months, and the next 3 months, and the next 3 months. And there's been times when we've been down to the last £10. Full stop. You've got rent coming in, you usually have unfortunately that was a little while ago, but literally on £10 left, and not having enough money to kind of be able to buy your next meal, and that sounds like something, but it was the reality we've got to. And yet somehow you find a way through, and then obviously the success story like Profero has moved on. And I remember our parents had no clue, no idea, thought we were complete dropout and losers. You were supposed to be that lawyer, you were that finance guy, now you're doing this thing called the internet. What's that about? And I remember we used to have these massive parties at Profero, which literally at some point used to stop the industry. I think the biggest one was at the Truman Brewery. We had 700 people, just completely going mental. But I remember we had this party, and it's about 4 years in, and my parents were dancing on the table in the local pub, and my dad very proudly sort of put his beer up and said, like, basically, they sort of had a nice little speech, and I think that was the day they realised that we weren't complete losers, and we weren't just being like complete computer geeks, and we were kind of starting something a little bit special.
Nice. What's your favourite ad campaign of all time?
Favourite ad campaign of all time? I know it's a bit cheesy, but it always sticks in mind. I used to love the old Tango ads. You know, I love the way how they just continued that, and it just because it took a brave client to kind of do that. And I know it's quite a traditional TV ad, and probably my position to be going, it's this fantastic digital thing. I just thought that what they did with that whole campaign and what they were doing, it just took something really brave to do it, and it became part of social culture. Yep. And I think when you get ideas that become part of the fabric, and they're played out in playgrounds, and they're played out in comedy sets, I think it's probably really doing the best stuff.
And lastly, before we move on to a quick fire round, what one piece of advice do you wish you were given when you first got into the industry?
Probably to listen more. No, I think we do listen a lot, but I think in the early days you can learn a lot. I think there's a wonderful thing about naivety. And when we started with Fair, I think I was like 22, now I was 24, and naivety allowed us to do things that you would never believe. I mean, if someone said to you right now, okay, well, you're going to start an agency from $1,000 and you're going to have basically a business in every single major market in the world that you want to be in.
I'm already shaking my head.
Everyone had gone like, basically, no, it's complete rubbish, you can't do it. Right? So, I mean, so there's one thing about the innocence of not knowing what you're doing. It means that everything truly feels possible and is possible. At the same time, I think if you listen more from the people that have done it before and been there before, you can probably fast track some of the decisions you make.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to a quick fire round.
Okay.
Can Lion or D&AT pencil?
Lion.
Olympic gold medal or an Oscar?
Medal.
The brightest person you've worked with?
David Putnam.
Great. The most creative person you've worked with?
Again, probably David Putnam.
And the best looking person you've worked with?
There was a girl called Laura who used to be our receptionist, and the reason she was best looking was her mum was an ex-Miss World. So she was
by default.
By default, we don't default. She wasn't necessarily. She didn't last too long, but she kept everyone happy for a while.
Creatives or suits?
Creatives.
Money or happiness?
Happiness.
Apple or Android?
Apple.
Degree or no degree?
Degree, but you don't need necessarily a good one.
Art directors or copywriters?
Copy.
Retained work or pitch work?
Retained.
Web or mobile?
Web.
Independent agencies or networked agencies?
I think independent would probably be the one for that one.
Outsourced production or on-site production?
You need both.
Don Draper or Roger Sterling?
Don.
And lastly, twist or stick?
Stick.
Thank you very much.